Hey everybody, Beverly here. Welcome to If They Did, You Can. Today I am so excited. Excited isn't the right word. Actually quite emotional about the imprint this man made on world history. I'm really excited to share and tell you about the man named Winston Churchill. Historians say he was the lion who roared when the British Empire needed him the most. Let's get started. Hey everybody, hope you can hear me okay. So Winston Churchill was born in 1874 in England, in Oxfordshire actually. And you know, his dad, on his father's side there was aristocracy, and his mother was American born, so I'd say he had the best of both. He did have a nanny that looked after him, which was probably a good job for some stability in his life. He did have mostly an unhappy childhood. He didn't really apply himself in school and kind of got into a bit of a trouble and such. But when the time came that it was kind of decided or opted that he would join the army. So he went to what is known as Sandhurst now. But you know what? I guess he found his purpose and destiny, and like the fight that he had inside him was met by being at Sandhurst, being at the military academy. And he actually graduated with honours, and then he went on and actually, like, obviously just travelled with the army and to different countries. So he was in India and different places. And while he was there, one of the things that Churchill did was he kind of became like a news correspondent, a war correspondent. To keep himself busy. He loved to write, he loved to read, and actually he was like an avid writer. And later on in his life he would find great literary success. You know, so he's a man of many talents. And then, so skip on a few years, and at age 25, I believe, he was elected to Parliament. So Winston Churchill married a lady called Clementine. She was the love of his life. Truly, actually, their marriage relationship, which lasted, for their entire lives. I believe, Winston, he was the one who passed on first. But it was that love and relationship that kept him going through the tumultuous experiences he would have in his political career. They had 5 children. Unfortunately, tragedy struck the family, and young Marigold passed away through some form of sickness at only 2 years of age. So obviously that was not an easy time. Churchill, remember, because I said he was self-funded, like he wasn't the kind of guy that was like governed by like political alliances or such a thing. He really was moved by cause, and if one party was just like not doing things or following the cause he believed, he switched to the other party. Churchill was not, it was just powerful to see someone who would follow conviction, and because of that, unfortunately, many of his peers grew to dislike him and regard him as reactionary. And when someone rocks the boat, sometimes you don't want that person anywhere near your boat, but sometimes the boat needs to be rocked, and in this case the boat needed to be rocked. Winston Churchill was the very person needed for a wartime prime minister. So he began. What did he do? He selected his war chamber. You know what he did? He selected the 3, because it was part of being formed by coalition government, as in the opposing party. Churchill was the only person that they would work with, so that's why he ended up being chosen to be prime minister by his own party, even though like the head guys, they didn't like him nor want him to be in it. And because of that, whenever 2 of those guys, Chamberlain and Halifax, who everyone wanted to be the next prime minister, they were also in the war cabinet. And from then, they just kind of set about trying to just bring down Churchill. So Halifax and Chamberlain, they wanted to get Churchill on record as saying that he would not entertain the thought of peace negotiation. Well, Churchill was adamantly against entering any form of peace negotiation with Hitler, because he knew Hitler was a monster. He saw Hitler as a monster, as a maniac, a dictator who could not be reasoned with. And if you entered into peace negotiations with him, he probably wouldn't even uphold it anyway. He did not want to negotiate with him at all, or Mussolini of Italy at the time. But these other men, they seem to have no fight in them, from what we can tell through history, of course, hindsight. But they seem to have no fight and really wanted to enter into some sort of negotiations, as the story goes. Whenever he took office, France kind of had to surrender at that time, and 300,000 of our infantry were stranded at Dunkirk on the beaches, and the Nazi army were closing in. And because of the airstrike and the air cover, the British Navy couldn't get to them safely. So Churchill and Admiral Ramsay, who was over the Navy, they came up with a plan called Operation Dynamo, where they had civilian boats go over to help rescue the men. And they used one infantry battalion, graciously and heroically became a diversion, a distraction, and took the air cover fire. And this meant that ultimately most of the infantry, who 2 days before everyone was saying in the war cabinet these men were lost, the army was wiped out, there was nothing could be done. But Churchill says, we've got to do something. And Ramsay agreed, and he overseen Operation Dynamo, and they managed to make a successful evacuation. So I'm going to read you this quote from Churchill. 1945, the Nazis were defeated and the war was over. And he said, "I have never accepted what many people have kindly said, namely that I inspired a nation. It was a nation and race dwelling all around that had the lion heart. I had the luck to be called upon to give the roar." You know, Winston Churchill, he went on in the final years of his life to serve his country. He served as Prime Minister again, and he retired because of health. And he travelled to America and different nations and spoke. And constantly, again, he was always on the fight for freedom. He was always it seemed to be opposed to the tyrant, the rule of the dictator. And he saw that the Iron Curtain was being formed in Eastern European countries, were starting to be shut down. And he warned people and said, we must do something about this. And it is from one of his famous speeches that the term, actually, the Iron Curtain, is known. You know, so personally, I was really greatly impacted by studying and reading and researching about Winston Churchill. This man who was so opposed to tyranny, world tyrants, global dictators, who was so interested and invested in seeing the prosperity of his nation and the rise of the people. But yet one who, obviously a bit rough around the edges, reactionary, gruff, but also one who, was in favour, out of favour, faced so much rejection, so much opposition from those around him. He had to take on the role of war prime minister with everyone basically in his own party against him. In his war council cabinet at one point, it did come down to no support at all. And then King George stepped up and visited him. At the start, King George didn't even support him, but then he stepped up and said, "You've got my support, I'm with you." We are celebrating the life of Winston Churchill, who saw and who stood staunchly, full of conviction, ready to bring down the dictator. That was only one of the things he did, but that was a mighty thing. I'm just going to finish off by reading a quote from one of his speeches. "We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." Winston Churchill was laid to rest. He had a state funeral. The Queen attended, and breaking precedents, she arrived before the coffin and the Churchill family, and she allowed them to leave before her, which is completely, it's like royal protocol she broke because of this man who greatly impacted a nation. The people showed out to say goodbye to the old warrior.